Before we get to your scheduled video, please remember that likes and comments tell YouTube to promote our work to other people, and subscribing to the channel tells you when something new drops. You can also head to the link tree in the description to peruse my books, join us on Discord, or support us on Patreon. You can get episodes of Journey of Wrestling and Violent Profiles early, as well as a load of other treats. Even just $1 a month earns you a name drop for being cool. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the show. Greetings and salutations, my fellow victory controllers. It is I, Eric J. Chucky, joined as always by the boy.
Hey.
This is the Two Nerds podcast, and I forgot to open the document again, but that's okay. Because I know the people who are cool are DG, on the tip of your tongue, Rob, a guy from Ohio, Passion Killer, 7-Eleven, Destrucy, KTL, and Harmony.
That is all 7.
I'll try to remember next time. We're here to talk about X-Men 97. You too can be cool by giving us at least $1 on Patreon. You get episodes of Journey of Wrestling a week early. The intro said it, but that's how you do it.
We're to talk about X-Men 97.
Yeah, there is a lot to cover here, even though it's only 10 approximately 35-minute episodes.
So let's start structural. In the lead up to this, White Raven decided to rewatch the entire original series to have context.
Right, that's why you're getting this episode now instead of when X-Men 97 ended.
I decided for contrast, and because I didn't want to not do that. So that I only have my memories of watching it as a kid, and he has watched it recently, so we have good contrast there.
I also tried to rewatch it, well, I say just a few years ago. It was about 7 years ago at this point. So it was the first season and a half, I think, were fresher in my mind anyway. And I kind of wanted to finish that because when I tried to rewatch it the first time, it held up really well. I mean, it's still a kid's cartoon from the 90s, for all that implies, but it's a pretty good one.
Look, there are good and bad kids' cartoons. This was a good one.
Yeah, and it's still pretty good. I mean, it's not faultless. There are plenty of episodes I didn't like, but I had a great time rewatching it and watching a lot of characters go through their arcs and, you know, seeing the stuff that I missed because I only was able to watch when I happened to be in the room with the TV on the channel at the time that the episode was showing.
Yeah, that's how it worked back in the day, man.
That's how it worked back in the day. And syndication wasn't quite how... Like, I watched a lot of The Simpsons and, like, Home Improvement and stuff because it was on every weeknight. You know, so, anyway. We're not here to talk about that so much. That's just the context I have. Do we want to do a brief spoiler-free review to anyone? This was sensational.
Yeah, this was excellent. This was lived up to all of my nostalgia-filled, I'm sure, memories of the show and surpassed them. This was truly an improvement on the original series to my memory of it. And I loved it. Watch it.
Yeah. I did watch the original series, and this is an improvement on it. It is telling an adult story without being unnecessarily gritty. There's even a grotesque thing that happens to one of the characters late in the season that they gave you a very tame version of compared to something that happens to the same character in the original series. So, like, they're still making it accessible to young people, and I appreciate that.
It felt like it respected the source material, and both in terms of the original series and the comics. And it felt like it was made with love, and that goes a long way.
Yep. I do also want to praise the voice cast. They did have to recast certain people. I didn't look into why. But the ones they did recast were either an upgrade, like Jennifer Hale, making me care more about Jean Grey than I ever have, or were so good...
I recognize that.
Yeah, we're so good at it that I had to triple check that it was a different guy, like the dude who was reading for Cyclops. The original cast has become old, obviously.
So the people they didn't recast all have creaky old person voice now.
But, like, it works, and it works. So, there's nothing wrong, except for Storm, who sounds the same.
Yeah, Storm sounds unchanged.
Yeah.
The passage of time has not hit Storm's voice actress at all.
Not with her voice, anyway. Great acting, great delivery, no complaints. Animation was beautiful. May I, just real briefly,
Go.
All right. Rogue's butt always looked like that except for that one scene, you fake fans. Now, the other lady's hips seem a little bit smaller than they used to be. So if you want to complain there, if that's what is keeping you from watching a children's cartoon, fine. You have my permission.
My memory is the same as your memory. You're not fake fans. Don't let him gaslight you. Also,
I think if we review the material, and I did.
And separately, if this is what's stopping you from watching a children's cartoon, I beg of you, brother, seek grass.
Bearer of the curse. Seek grass.
Leave the cave. Put the tissues away. Touch grass.
Yeah. Anyway. There's a lot to discuss in terms of plot. I was going to suggest maybe we not go as in-depth as we often do.
No, we'll be here forever, and I want you to watch this show.
Because I was trying to... Y'all know, if you've been here for my We're Reviewing a Television Show episodes of the podcast, I don't know how to approach the episode-by-episode structure, so I was really, before you sat down, trying to figure out a great way to tackle it, and there's just too much that happens in every episode.
There just is.
And it's all, like, plot-relevant stuff.
Like, it's all there's, like, foreshadowing, and they set stuff up, and it's well-plotted and well-executed and interesting, and you should watch it. Go watch it. It's not... Disney Plus isn't that expensive, and it's not that long.
Yeah, you get Hulu on it now, too. It's not even in a separate app anymore.
It's wild the first time I opened Disney Plus and Family Guy was there.
It's good. It's worth your time. If you like X-Men at all, I will say you do need to know what X-Men are.
Yeah, you kind of need to know at least a little bit about the X. I don't think you need to know what happened all in the original series, because notably, I watched that when I was a child, and I know I didn't catch all of it, because of the thing we talked about how you had to actually be in the room when the X-Men was on. But I know enough about X-Men through comics and pop cultural osmosis and the parts of the show I did catch as a kid that I was fine.
Yeah. Basically, all you need to understand is the basic relationships between the principal characters and maybe how Bishop and Jubilee got here. And even then, they recap that pretty well. I don't think you'd be lost going in, but it helps.
And understanding that this is a narrative that takes place relatively far after the initial X-Men inciting incident in any new X-Men property.
Yeah. So that said, we enter into spoilery territory. Let's start with, was there anything you didn't like about the show?
I'm sure there was. Like, factually speaking, there had to be something that I felt a little annoyed by. But, hand to God, at this moment, I can't think of it.
I will say the villain of this season and the last couple of episodes didn't hit as hard for me as I wanted.
I'm not super familiar with that villain.
I wasn't from comics either.
So it's not like, hey, that guy. It was standing upon the merits of what I saw. And I actually quite enjoyed it, but mostly that's down to a really good performance.
Sure, I think he did a great performance. I think he was a really good threat, like, against this team of X-Men. I think they played their hand building up to him really well. He just didn't... I wasn't hype.
And that's fair. There were cool, like, big, cool, like, cartoon fight scene moments that were pretty hype.
Yeah.
For me, it's not exactly the same, obviously, but he was emotionally giving Ultron.
A little bit, yeah.
And I like that. That's a good dynamic for a villain.
If he was Ultron, I'm mad.
I know, bud.
He wasn't, and that's a joke about butts. I'm not going to do the Goblin Runaway bit, just so we're aware.
That's okay.
It's all right. Cool.
But we don't really need to go episode by episode, but just generally, let's talk over. This will be exiting the spoiler-free review section of the thing. We're not going to spoil everything because it's so on, but...
Well, I was speaking in obliques mostly because I don't remember his name. Bisharp?
Sure. Let's talk generally about what happens in the series and the, like...
Bastion.
Bisharp.
It's short for Sebastian.
Yeah.
What kind of idiot would do that? Go with Seb. Anyway, yeah, well, I'm sorry I interrupted you for my stupid bit, but please continue.
You did. I was speaking, let's generally go over sort of the story of the series.
Okay, so we're basically, it really thrusts you into the middle of the soap opera that is X-Men. Humans either are not a factor or hate mutants, which the X-Men are. Professor Xavier is presumed dead, which is a little bit of a retcon from the end of the original series, but it's fine. It's fine. Magneto is left charge of the school because Xavier believes in him, and that's how they are.
Because Charles, for all that he's the smartest motherfucker, just cannot learn this lesson.
No, I think he's just that committed. I think he just believes that hard. Cyclops and Jean are thinking about leaving the X-Men to raise their baby. And then a clone of Jean shows up. Or the real Jean. Or it might have been Ben Reilly.
And then it becomes the X-Men.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the first 2 episodes is all that.
Like...
And that's not even touching on Sunspot.
One of the things this show does really well is it captures the, as you put it so eloquently, sheer soap operatic nature of, like, the good runs of the X-Men.
Sure.
Like, famously, X-Men, I've never, like, been a huge X-Men guy for the comics because I find their shit confusing.
It is. And it's a lot of plates to spin because... Understand when I say that they are absolutely picking up these characters' arcs from where they left them when the original series ended. There is so much about why Magneto is acting the way he is in this series that is explained through the things he goes through in the original one. He is at this place because he went through that. And
he's also got some fire new drip.
I didn't like the big M. It seemed tacky.
It's very, like, classic of that era.
Sure.
Him trying to be a good guy. This is what you good guys wear, right?
There's another small complaint I have. Some of Jubilee's dialogue was anachronistic.
Yeah, that's actually a complaint I've heard from a couple different people talking about this show, is that Jubilee's dialogue is half 90s kid, half modern kid.
So the trick is that we forget. We forget what slang we used back then. The books I write are set in the late 2000s, 2010s soon.
And sometimes your dialogue will
Sometimes my dialogue isn't right because this is just the words I think with, and I'm not going to. First of all, there isn't one, but secondly, I'm not going to try to adhere to a lexicon of 2009. I like the J.R.R. Tolkien excuse. This is a tale being told in the language of the era in which it was written. It is a translation.
But for something like this that is much more direct, it
did suck me out of it a little bit with things like Bestie. And, it's not the worst thing in the world. Like, please, this series is phenomenal.
We're trying for the age-old Two Nerds podcast compliment sandwich, and...
There is no bottom bun to this sandwich. Spoiler alert.
We got compliment, criticism in the middle is the meat of the sandwich... compliment as the other bottom bun.
I see.
This is a wish sandwich, yeah. Brother. There's so little filling.
And like things unravel from there, big dramatic events. I don't like. There's so much. Storm loses her powers and has to go on a quest to regain them or make herself comfortable with having lost them. They
cover some very iconic X-Men storylines. they adapt several things that happened in the comics into this series, which was something they did in the series before.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But they do a really good job here, and some of it is like dark shit for a kid's cartoon.
Sure, Morph has PTSD. Still,
Deservedly so.
Morph is just like getting over it. Like, I mean, we pick up where we left off with the character, except back on the regular team instead of Professor X at the end of every episode with Morph going, "All right, Morph's going to go away for a while. Bye, Morph. Everyone say bye, Morph." And Wolverine has a big cry.
Wolverine is happy every time Morph shows up.
I'm happy every time Morph shows up to antagonize Wolverine and Wolverine gets happy. I love that this is this man's best friend. So obviously. When I was a kid, I don't know where I got the idea that Wolverine was nothing but a stone cold badass. And
no, he was a sappy dad the whole time.
Always. But rewatching this series, it's all right there. It's all my favorite version of Wolverine through the whole thing. He's just a big teddy bear who does want to punch stuff if that's the obvious solution. He's grumpy and just, he's phenomenal, and I love it.
I thought of something that I wasn't, an actual thing I'm not super happy about with the series. I don't like that they implied that Morph has a crush on Wolverine. Sometimes people can just be friends.
I didn't pick that up too hard. I know what you're talking about, but like they
imply it pretty heavily.
They do, but I feel like
it's okay for people to just be friends.
You're right. I wonder if that's not Morph dealing with trauma.
Possibly.
I wonder if that's not actually a crush and is more, this is the only person who has ever loved me in any way, and I am unnecessarily attached to that.
And this is the only person who gave a shit when I was gone.
Right, yeah. Like, I don't... Let's see what happens in the next season, which, I mean, in a lot of ways, let's see what happens in the next season. I don't have a lot of faith that this is going to stay as golden as it is because of behind-the-scenes stuff. But, hey, I'll remain optimistic.
We'll always have this season.
We will always have this season. We'll always have Genosha. Speaking of Genosha, when they do finally go there, that's when Nightcrawler shows up.
He's been much improved.
Highly. This is representative of my favorite version.
This is much more the Nightcrawler from the comics than the Nightcrawler in the original series.
Yes, and he's so good, so insightful. Everything I love about the character is there. He's enthusiastic and looks on the bright side of things, and he's doing the teleporting around for no reason stuff that he does. Like, it's just
because
really...
you would if you could teleport.
Hell yeah, you would. They nail everybody so well. Beast is so phenomenal.
That's another thing I wanted to compliment specifically. Later in the series, they bridge into a thing you kind of have to tackle with the X-Men. If you're doing the part of the X-Men story that is the allegory, shall we say, which is like, at what point do you stop groveling for forgiveness for existing?
And that was nothing they shied away from in the original series either. They had to use different terminology, not just because of the time.
90s.
Well, there was also, like, they couldn't talk about Jewish people in the original series, and that made some interesting edits to Magneto's backstory.
They mostly just talked around it, I believe.
Basically, yeah.
They just didn't directly mention it.
Right.
Whereas now, there's a scene where he has a sleeve off, and you can see his camp tattoo, and they zoom in on it. They're not subtle.
The character reacts to it like, oh, God.
Oh, shit, I'm the bad guy, huh? And they're, on the one hand, wow, it took you this long, huh? But on the other hand, yeah, that's a real moment. And, like, if you're in that situation and you see that, you go, oh, fuck, I'm the baddies.
But that's the stuff I love about the X-Men, is the stuff like the Friends of Humanity. I think they're some of the best villains for these people because, like, I love superhero stuff, duh, obviously. And I love it when superheroes fight big, scary threats, duh, obviously. But I also like that mundane day-to-day, why do you have to hate me for just existing?
Like, what does that get you, man?
Sure, and I understand it's compelling because from the human's point of view as well, sometimes a guy just goes nuts and blows up everything you love because he can.
Like, look, there's a reason it's not a one-to-one allegory for various other groups that people like to use the X-Men as an allegory for. Because, like, mutants are dangerous. They are dangerous. One mutant who gets a wild hair up their ass can potentially fuck the whole world up for everyone. There's a reason regular people are scared of them, and some of it's justified.
Sure. It brings up complex stuff, and it addresses it in complex ways. And I like that there's a line in the sand moment where maybe people you wouldn't expect switch sides on an issue, and, you know...
I do have a question.
Sure.
Were there any good humans in this show? I'm thinking back on it, and I can't think of any of the non-mutant characters in this show who weren't dickheads.
Well, okay, so I don't know that she counts, but Moira.
Does Moira McTaggart count, though?
Yeah, like, that's fair. And I think there are some who definitely get a bad side of the mutants. Like, there's a couple of people that were nice until they were, very real spoiler alert, extremely real spoiler alert, revealed to secretly be evil racist robots.
Yeah.
But they didn't know they were secretly evil racist robots. So, like, were they bad people, or were they...
You had to join, you had to volunteer to be part of the evil I'm going to do something program.
And there was a lot of people in the government who were mostly just concerned. Like, the president is still, you know, mostly on the side of the mutants, even if he does stupid shit.
He's just having to face political realities.
Yeah, it's
and
complicated.
Captain America is a bit, it's not his show, so he's a bit of a lame duck in this. He's very,
Well, it's also a different Cap.
Yeah.
Because it's a different Iron Man.
Yeah.
And I like that they did that. I still think maybe Tony could have helped, but whatever.
It's a cameo from the 90s Spider-Man, by the way. Love that.
Yeah. Maybe that was Ben Reilly.
But, Brain? There we go. Cap in this is very, like... I don't know, bureaucracy bound in a way he's not typically in more modern adaptations, but that's very that fits the time period from the show.
It fits Cap's other appearances in the previous seasons as well. So,
yeah. But I was struggling to think of anyone who's not a mutant who isn't like at least a little bit of a dick.
I think it's. So, I feel like there's at least one person who isn't Moira McTaggart, first of all. Secondly, I don't think it serves the story to show normal humans as anything other, and I say normal in the sense that, like, not with extremist opinions, as anything other than people in the crowd. Because that's not what the story is about.
Yeah, there are definitely good structural reasons for that. That's not even a complaint. It's just something I noticed.
Sure, an observation, sure. Well, and I think, like, especially, it puts you in the shoes of the mutants a little more, because even if the world is full of billions and billions of people who don't hate you, if 50 guys really do and keep showing up at your house to cause problems, it's going to color your opinion of them.
Yeah, it's going to make it part of your day.
Yeah, it's going to make it part of your everyday, and that's, that sucks. Man, it's so hard not to just jazz all over this cabbage.
Like, we're struggling, you can tell we're stuttering a lot, because we're struggling for stuff to say, because at a certain point, compliments can only last for so long. there's only so many ways to say this was very good, and I had a good time watching it. I will say that the emotional journeys the characters go on are all they all feel very grounded. They all make sense for the person who's having them. There are a lot of fun moments from the comics that are seen on screen. That's really fun to see in adaptation, stuff we haven't seen before.
Sure.
I get...
Some of those things are brown.
Some of those things are Cyclops looking at Wolverine and going, "What did you expect, black leather?"
That was hilarious.
Fucking boom roasted. And... Or it might have been Sunspot he said that too. I forget.
Maybe, yeah, it might have been Sunspot.
But... I didn't get my favorite version of Magneto, because my favorite version of Magneto is just a villain. But this version of Magneto is fucking excellent.
Yeah. Episode 2 is, I mean, it's his apex.
There's a speech at the end of it that is just peak Magnet.
Speech and behaviors. I appreciate that he is... It's not that he has a secret evil plan. It's that he's trying as hard as possible not to have a secret evil plan.
He is Jules at the end of Pulp Fiction for a lot of this show. He is trying real hard, Ringo. Please don't make it any harder for him.
And it's so good. I love that when they had Executioner showed up, it was one of the key Friends of Humanity guys from the original series. You didn't need to do that, and they did.
A lot of that. There's a lot of little attention to detail. There's, just little bits from the original series that even I remember that they carry through that no one asked for.
There's a point where Jean is in like a hallucination of her past, as she often is, and she's holding a doll that I am 99% sure was the doll in her room in the original series. Like, you don't need to do that. You don't need to make Gambit's stupid catchphrase good.
You don't need to make Gambit's stupid catchphrase that apparently he forced a lot from the original series that I don't remember at all. I remember it being a thing he said, but I don't remember it being like something he was trying to get over like fetch.
There were some episodes where it was the only thing he said.
You don't need to make it poignant. You don't need to make it. You don't need to make it a line that is like that is shouted in righteous fury a few episodes later.
But they did, and it's great. And there's so much that's great. A funny thing is, Jubilee's original voice actor shows up as a different character, sort of, and she doesn't sound that different.
That's fun.
She doesn't sound that different.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah. But there's a lot they do with Jubilee that's reflecting on everything that's happened to her. Jubilee is another person who, even the shitty 5th season, where the animation changed and Gambit's voice actor was really bad and Rogue had a tiny head and everything was horrible, she is still experiencing growth from the stories they told there.
They didn't leave it behind, and they easily could have.
Yeah, they didn't have to go to this much effort. And this is the kind of polish, attention to detail, care that I was so hopeful for when Marvel started doing series again, because of what they did in the movies that was similar.
Yeah, this was not an MCU thing, but it felt MCU-ish in that it felt like the people who made this... It felt like the early MCU, in that the people who made this it felt like they actually like the source material. They were inspired to tell a story that fit this world rather than going to their office job to tell a story that was for this IP.
Well, and there's so many things that were not just nods to the original series, but payoffs. Like, okay, one of the things that we never got to enjoy from the original series was the actual confrontation of Cable and Cyclops and Jean.
Yeah, they don't even imply that in the original series.
They tease it a bunch, like, because they're there kind of thing, and Cyclops is always mad about his dad, but, like, they never got the chance to pull it off, and they bother to pull it off here. They bother to continue with Bishop's trauma about leaving his sister behind. Like, there's stuff that you didn't need to address fully. And they do, and absolutely, it's not just the office job, and they're not doing that thing where they're like, we have to recruit a new audience. They are looking at their core built-in audience that they know they have and going, look,
this one's for you.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want to do a new album to bring in new people. Sometimes you do an album for the fans who brought you to the dance. That's what this one is.